Mel announced the end of her podcast that just started.
It's not. Stop it.
So season one.
Stop it. Stop it.
Season one.
And don't join forces with
Hot
that
and
little
bothered.
people acting like, oh, epic fail. F- you. I'm getting a set built.
Melyssa Ford went in on me in her last episode with the Joe Budden podcast, and I just wanted to respond because she seems to have more issue with what I say than what the podcast says about her. I mean, we got to remember, Flip accused her of being fake and phony, so much so that she walked off set, and it aligns with the way she's handled the botched rollout of her podcast. Specifically, if you zone in on her first fallout with S, where she was going to launch the Menopod podcast, and it was supposed to be about health, but because the business wasn't right, she jettisoned them out of the show and then rebranded as Hot and Bothered, and it continued to be a health podcast minus the person who actually knew about health. It was a big, tragic misstep, I thought, because when she did the content, you could tell she wasn't really an authority figure on health. She doesn't really know what she's talking about, and she only seems to care about women's health because she's aging, not because she's genuinely interested in it. And Joe Budden himself would be the biggest critiquer of the pod, often highlighting how she wasn't giving it up, even highlighting this awkward moment on air where her co-host or her producer was seeking to get her to open up more, but she refused to do so, even on her own podcast. And there was also interesting parts in this rant that Melyssa Ford did coming from Flip, as he ridicules her for making false promises to her team and saying that one of the guys thought that he was going to meet Joe Budden as a result of working on the Hot and Bothered podcast, but that didn't happen.
For that.
Yeah, she scammed another one. No, she got another one. I don't know what she be telling these people.
I'm gonna get you.
Watch.
Don't worry, Joe. Hopefully,
6
Joe gonna
months-
see it and bring you on. Remember using her clout.
I'll be getting hushed.
She used her relationship. I can get you to speak to Joe. This episode 10, I didn't speak to Joe yet.
Could it be that Melyssa Ford is indeed phony, making false promises in order to use that to get ahead? I don't know. I kind of believe it. I don't think that's a narrative. Also, the cast of the Joe Budden podcast is often giving her advice that she doesn't want to take. On the behind the scenes episode, Joe was saying, hey man, you did 2 episodes. You did one about your video vixen life, and it did really well, right? The one with the Natasha Ellie vixen. She was a vixen in the industry at the same time as Melyssa Ford. And you also talked about your sex life, and that did real well. But then you went back to the cancer.
Big Mel got the for that women's health. Listen, how was the industry? That's right. Melissa's favorite sex position. I was like, whoa. So you did do it. So don't make me out to be some type of. And the numbers did what?
And the views plummeted. So, I don't know. Melyssa Ford just seems to be ashamed of herself. She has internalized shame about how people view her, and it's causing her to make terrible content. We also have to look at the countless people she's hurt in making the Hot and Bothered podcast. She stole the name from the Hot and Bothered folks, and they said that.
I woke up on Monday morning to a DM from a stranger saying somebody else is using your name, your podcast name. So I obviously immediately sent it to Chris, and I'm like, what's going on here? And then we spend the next 48 hours spiraling, being like, why is this happening? And not only is our name being used as the name of another podcast, but our slogan is also being used in this person's bio, and in the caption of their Instagram post is, quote, "Are you hot or are you bothered?"
That was kind of off-putting to me, because in content creation, it's wild when you completely steal something and then say you stole it because you're hot and you're Melyssa Ford and you can do what you want. That was a bit disgusting, I must say. And to me, I can only speak from my vantage point, the pod has ended. It appears from her recent post where she's asking what video vixens you want her to interview that she's rebranding it. It will be the same in name, but it will be changing in spirit. She is probably shifting away from health because she's not the authority on that. These last few episodes of the the Hot and Bothered podcast were really the Mental Pod podcast. And now she's actually coming back with, I believe, a new show, a new strategy. So I am not backing down. The show was an epic fail. She ended after 5 episodes because she knew it wasn't hitting. Melyssa Ford is on the verge of fumbling something that is so easy just because she's ashamed of herself. And by the way, this is internalized shame. I'm not age shaming because Melyssa Ford still looks great, but she is literally in her 40s and she won't have this shot again. And I think some new video vixen is going to come along and do all of the stuff she's afraid of and take advantage of the opportunities she is passing by. And only then will she learn about the errors of her ways. Yes, she said she's already talked about her vixen days on, in the past. But does she know that she talked about those video vixen days on other people's platform? She talked about it on Jason Lee's platform. She talked about it on Hot 97. She talked about it on Power 105.1. But it's different when you're on your own platform, monetizing your own career. And Joe would be the perfect example of that. He was all over the industry. Going on MTV, going on The Breakfast Club, going on Ebro in the mornings, talking about his battles with Drake, blah, blah, blah. But his pod, it was different. He could say what he wanted. There was no pushback. I think Melyssa Ford is either dense or unaware, and she can't realize that the person who thinks her show sucks the most is her own boss, who regularly ridicules all her shortcomings as a podcaster and likely knew her shortcomings so well that he didn't even consider having her show on his network. So, I do think Melyssa Ford is salvageable. I believe her podcast can be a big hit. But I don't think she's going to be able to make the changes because she doesn't like what she sees in the mirror. And if she talks about what her career was, she's going to fold the minute that anybody gives her any pushback or says, oh my God, don't nobody want to hear about this whole talk about her video vixen career. But she has to stay really locked down. Because who cares if you get called a hoe? They're going to call you a hoe anyway. That's just how it goes on the internet. That's kind of every girl, which is unfortunate, but it's just the reality. You can't let that stop you from being great. And Melyssa Ford is actually close to being great if she implements the changes that everyone is telling her to implement. When I saw her rant, I was like, man, it's crazy how she has all this energy for my rant, for my video, but doesn't go back at Joe because he's saying the same thing I said. The same thing that Mark Lamont said. He didn't say it as explicitly as Joe said it, but he was saying, giving her advice on how to title videos.
But I told you even that, like title it like that, right?
Make it about, you want to hear the title? Hold on.
Make it about some freaky shit.
Check.
Check.
It's clever. I did this on my own. Don't fear the finger, what your doctor wants you to know.
See, I would take the doctor shit out. I'd be like, don't fear the finger. Call it a day. Have some cool ass thumbnail looking freaky.
Well, I am crouching
down. You get the cancer 20 minutes later.
But let me know what you think. Do you think that the rant was coming from a place of self-awareness? Or do you genuinely think that she believes that my advice is bad advice? Because I don't think anyone who says I've been going at Melyssa Ford can honestly tell me that I've been giving her bad advice. If you look at the most viewed videos on her channel, the advice I've given is pretty true. Interview more video vixens. Talk about your sex life. It's not even that novel of advice. It's actually pretty clear what she should do, but she doesn't want to do it, and I think I've outlined why that is. Internalized shame, fear of being judged in an industry that is going to judge you regardless of what you do. And I also wanted to put a bow on this by saying, I know a lot of folks are going to say, Danny, but when you did a podcast, it flopped. It actually didn't flop. The numbers were really good. And they were doing better views than a lot of Melyssa Ford's content. I mean, I even did a clip of me and Shammy having this rapper rap for us. And it did more views than a lot of Melyssa Ford's episode. the reason I stopped it was I could make more money off of doing think pieces. And the splits weren't aligning with what I wanted to do. When I first started, the splits made sense. But then as I did it and I saw the returns on the videos I was doing, the think pieces and the podcast, I was like, we can end this. It doesn't need to stick around. So I'm sorry, when you do things publicly, you're going to see the evolution of the thinking, the thought process behind creative ideas. And I might bring back Shammy on the channel. I might have Shammy, do an episode with us. But weekly just wasn't something I was interested in. I might do podcasts from time to time, but as of now, I'm closing it up and just doing think pieces because think pieces are fun. Think pieces are easier to crank out, but don't rule out a podcast in the future. All right, y'all, that's my video for now. Follow me on Instagram to Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter to Stop TV. Tap in with me on Patreon. I'm getting more subscribers. I think I just hit 200, which is a lot to me. That is a lot. A lot of people don't get there. All right, y'all. This is Danny from the Stop. Peace.